Hudur, we heard that MTA is a gift
From Allah.
from Allah handed to the Jama'ah. We want to hear the story of MTA from
Right.
A to Z.
Okay.
Starting how the idea
From
came.
M to A or A to Z?
No, from A to Z.
Okay.
So-
MTA is M to A,
Yes, MTA.
right? Inshallah. I think I should begin with the beginning. It's a long and interesting story. It all started in the early Zia period, when Zia was the dictator, absolute dictator of Pakistan. In 1984, he promulgated an ordinance whereby Ahmadis were forbidden to preach their faith to anyone, whomsoever. And if they opened a word, or even through sign language, they conveyed what they believe in, then they will be liable to be punished by 3 years rigorous imprisonment, and also a fine could be imposed whose upper limit was not defined. Any judge could impose any fine. Still, the law is undefined. And before that, they had started showing the signs of some mayors they were contemplating. Because anti-Ahmadiyya propaganda was carried out with great vigor and with many signs of there being an organized support and design behind this. In all the national papers, in pamphlet forms, everywhere there was anti-Ahmadiyya propaganda. When we wrote an answer to some of the major questions, all Ahmadis who were distributing those pamphlets were arrested and dragged to the police custody, we call hawalat and so on. Not all, but those who could be, either they were carried by the mullahs or the mobs to the police station, or some police people saw them doing it and they caught hold of them. And some of the legal proceedings against them is still continuing for the last, how many years? 84 to now.
11.
What?
11 years.
11 years, that's almost 11. Now this was indicative of what they did have in mind. So then in April, 26th of April, 1984, General Zia promulgated that notorious ordinance, which deprived Ahmadis of all their fundamental human rights regarding religion. The ordinance said that no Ahmadi can call himself a Muslim. No Ahmadi can even, in answer of a question, what your faith is, can say he is a Muslim. No Ahmadi is entitled to recite kalima tayyaba or kalima shahada, and if an Ahmadi is found guilty of saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, he will be imprisoned for 3 years rigorous imprisonment. And then the ordinance went on to say no Ahmadi can call azan, give azan for prayer. No Ahmadi can call his place of worship as mosque. No Ahmadi can behave in a manner as if he were a Muslim. The style of life of Ahmadi must change, and it should not be indicative of his being a Muslim. And if anybody complains against him that we saw an Ahmadi behaving like a Muslim, the case will be registered against him and he will be imprisoned. And these crimes will not be bailable. see. Unbelievably, unbelievably stupid and mad ordinance was promulgated, and that day the mullahs all over enjoyed thoroughly and danced and distributed sweets, etc., that we have got the final victory against Ahmadiyya. All propagation of Ahmadiyya was stopped if anybody is caught expressing what he believes in. He will again be punished by this. Now, even if somebody asked us what you believe in, and we said we were Muslims, we believe in Allah, all right, come to the police station, that sort of thing. From buses, Ahmadi boys were dragged because they suspected them to be Ahmadis. They opened their bags and found Ahmadiyya literature and said, look here, you're carrying this literature. This was carried on to the extent that cases are registered and legal proceedings have been recorded there against some Ahmadis about whom it was reported, and the police diary says that it was reported that he possesses in his house some verses of the Holy Quran. We raided the house, and in the presence of witnesses we discovered Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imagine. Bismillah ar-Rahman. The whole country has become a drug mafia. All the worst possible things, wine and alcohol, all in every form, and hashish and things are now rampant, common everywhere in Pakistan. But that is not a great crime. That's not against Islam. It's a sign of being a Muslim of Pakistan nowadays. But to be in possession of Bismillah, it is intolerable, absolutely. So much so that if an Ahmadi said Assalamu alaikum to someone and he took offense, then he would be imprisoned and sometimes beaten and punished and jailed for 1, 2, 3 years. And this is again on record. So this is the background of what I'm going to tell, what happened later on. About Assalamu alaikum, I tell you a very interesting actual happening. No, it's not a story. In Rawalpindi or Islamabad, in either of the two places, I think it was in Rawalpindi. Maybe Islamabad, yeah, you remember that? No. Somebody saw an old man coming with beard, so he said Assalamu alaikum. And he happened to know him to be an Ahmadi, and this was a mullah. What did you say? Assalamu alaikum to me? As if you are a Muslim. You have hurt my sensibilities. You have absolutely, violated the law of Pakistan by saying Assalamu alaikum to me. So he raised his voice and gathered some, street boys and things, and they all dragged him, surrounding him as if a criminal was caught red-handed, and produced him before the SHO of that area. SHO is the sub-inspector of police, or whatever, head of the local police station. He's called SHO. So he was a sensible man. He was not a mullah. He said, what do you mean by that? What crime has he committed? Don't you see everywhere there is robbery, theft, murder, abduction? And you don't take notice of that. I haven't seen any mullah bringing criminals, rounding up criminals and bringing to me. And you have brought this gentleman for the crime that he said Assalamu alaikum to you? He said, yes. He said, no, I am not going to register a case. He said, all right, we'll report the matter. He has violated the law, and we pressurize you to press charges against him. Now that man, police people, if they want to be stiff, they can be. They don't care about these things. They have their own connections upwards. They have a means to get a protection from their officers, So this man was a very brave man. he said, whatever you do, however much you threat me, I am not going to register a case against him. He has not committed a crime. After they got completely disillusioned about their hopes with the police officer, then he turned to this Ahmadi. He said, look here, mister, I am going to leave you this time. I am going to leave you this time, but next time if you are brought in and you have said Assalamu alaikum to this mullah or anybody else, I'll really punish you heavily. So let them bring you the next time for committing the crime of saying curse be on you rather than peace of Allah. And if you say curse be on you, I will have nothing to do with you. You will go scot-free. So remember this, in future, make it a point never to forget to curse them whenever you see them. But never say Assalamu alaikum. So he said, all right, thank you very much for this very noble advice.
You didn't forget to say Assalamu alaikum to the officer.
Not to them. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, sir. I won't forget this. Now they had gone to the extent, they still are pursuing these matters. Hundreds of cases of Ahmadi criminals are registered in various courts by the police, ultimately, processed, and the charges have been pressed, and some have been punished for 2 years, 3 years rigorous imprisonment for doing the same, and also in some cases what's the second दफा क्या है, कौन सी एक्ट कौन सा है वो 290 C 95 I'm sorry C या A 295 C, the case is registered normally under 298 C or something. Now in many cases the judges have enhanced the nature of crime to 295 C, which means insult to the Prophet, which is punishable only by death. And the crime, they said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now, all efforts on the part of Ahmadis to rebut their allegations and to counter their propaganda was stopped by government. And in itself, it was considered a crime for an Ahmadi even to respond to these charges. Hazrat Wasim-ul-Islam's books were misquoted and still are being misquoted very viciously by the anti-Ahmadiyya mullahs. They pick out a sentence or two from here, they pick out a sentence or two from there, and say, look here, he says this about Hazrat Muhammad, that about Hazrat Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain, this and that. So they try to, harangue the common man against Ahmadiyyat and work them up to very high-pitched sentiments so that they're driven to violence against Ahmadis and so on. Now, when Ahmadis respond, they say you are not permitted to publish any material of your founder. So you are committing a crime and thereby you are hurting the sensibilities of the Muslims. And for that you have no right. When we say tell them, look here, please try to understand the material which you think can really inflame the temperaments, you are freely publishing. You believe that Hazrat Wasim-ul-Islam's literature is objectionable because it inflames the temperament of the common people. So those excerpts which you think are inflammable material, they are being published widely and freely. When we write our response, it is just to subdue the worked up emotions and to counter it and to extinguish the fire they burn. So you call this a violation of Pakistan's law? What sort of law that is? But nothing doing. On the one hand, these were the enemies of Ahmadiyyat were given full license to misinterpret Ahmadiyya literature as they pleased, pick a line from there, pick a line from there. Like some people say, the Holy Quran says, never say the prayer. Where does it say? It says, La taqrubu salat. Don't you read the Quran? So like that, what the enemies do to the Quran, they do to Muslim Islam literature and so on. So this had started even before the ordinance, these restrictions and these measures, because I tell you, as I've already told you, when some anti-Ahmadiyya literature very specifically hitting at Ahmadiyya leadership and Ahmadiyya faith and everything was widely published, I wrote an answer to that, and this was published in large number, 100,000 or more, and I picked up the main points of their attack and countered it as best as possibly I could with reference to the Holy Quran and the verses and then the Hadith. But this was a very powerful rebuttal. It totally disarmed them, and it annoyed the government so much that an order was issued even before this law that arrest everybody who is found distributing this literature. And the ordinance came later on. This literature was distributed before, yet their cases are still pending in many courts against the boys. You violated the ordinance of General Zia by distributing the literature prior to the ordinance. So, and they still have to appear in the courts. So, when I got fed up, I gave a sermon telling the nation what you are doing. And I said, look here, you are trying to do something which the people of Hazrat Saleh did. They cut the hamstrings of the camel on whose back he rode and distributed his message. So you, in the modern times, this is exactly what you are doing to the message of Hazrat Muslim, whose message is nothing else than Islam. So you are annoying God. But I said, do whatever you may. When Allah begins to send His blessing and His support from heaven, then you will not be able to stop that. And these are my words. I said, look here, you can stop a shower, but you can't stop a rain. You stop a rain for a while with your umbrellas and things, but if the rain covers the whole world, how can the mullah stop the rain from Allah? And this is how the message of Ahmadiyyat is going to spread to the whole world. Rain would come and you will be able to do nothing about it.
Hudur, you said so?
That's exactly.
Yes.
I said this is going to be a global rain from Allah in response to what you are doing to us. And then I challenge you to try, and you will not be able to do it, whatever you may. All together, you will be totally frustrated by God. And I gave this example of rain coming from heaven. Said Allah's fazl are going to bless Ahmadiyyat, and they will come and cover the whole globe, not only one country, Pakistan, and you will not be able to do anything. So that is why I call it a blessing from Allah. This MTA exactly descends from heaven because all the messages are thrown up in beams and they reflect from ionosphere, surface of the ionosphere, and then they return to earth. And they actually come from heaven like the rain comes from heaven, because the rain also doesn't come from far off. It rises from here and then descends. You see, this is the background.
What is the number of this law?
295C.
Ordinance 20.
20.
Ordinance 20 promulgate. That was Ordinance 20 in 1984.
Yes, 26th of April. 19.
That's Ordinance 20. That's right.
Hudur, I'm afraid that the Arabs will not believe that this happens in Pakistan.
They won't believe it.
Yes, it's too much.
Let them go and see it themselves.
Yes.
See it with their own eyes.
The Arabs, many of the Arabs are against the Ahmadiyya, but these things
Other-
cannot happen in the Arab countries.
You see, imagine the High Court has issued a decision, given a decision against Ahmadis in favor of these mullahs, supporting their view that when an Ahmadi says Kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, it is tantamount to insulting Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he said the government is absolutely right, according to the Holy Quran, to stop Ahmadis from expressing Kalima Shahada and from doing anything which Muslims do. Because they say it is, imagine the quality of the mind of that man who wrote this judgment. They call him Justice. He wrote that, don't you know, for the sake of the rest of the world, I'm going to prove that this is very logical. Don't you have this patents, Coca-Cola patent and that patent and that patent? So we have patented Islam.
MashaAllah.
Islam, how could one country go for a patent? He doesn't even know the ABC of patents. And this is not a trade commodity. It's a message from Allah for the whole world. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And this man who is called a justice writes that, look here, I can give you, I can quote, present an argument which we understand all over the world, Patents they know. So Islam and Islamic terminology are patents. Who got registered this patent? In whose name? And if it is a patent, when did it start? Whenever a new invention comes, the inventor has a right to get patent, not other people. So did they invent Islam now? And they have.
Yes, this is
This is what they have done.
Yes.
So that much is all right. But the Islam of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was never patented by him or by anybody else because it was invented by God, not by him. So this is the quality of mind we are fighting with. And the common people with common sense, particularly the Arabs I know, they can't believe these things to happen. And another argument, this is appealing to the lowest man, the man of the street, belonging to the lowest rung of the society, was that, look here, can you tolerate if somebody writes kalima on a toilet? Of course you can't. You react violently. So Ahmadis are like toilets. And for the kalima to be written on their breasts, or for them to say is like a toilet reciting the kalima. And if they are murdered in the street for this crime, no wonder. The law could close its eyes, because it is quite natural for the Muslims to murder somebody for the sanctity and honor of this central article of their faith, Kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So if they try to write it on their breast, this is like writing it on toilets. Now, when we ask them, how can a non-Muslim become a Muslim? If we are toilets because we are not Muslims according to you, then the whole world is turned into a toilet. And the Holy Quran is published in toilets, distributed in toilets. People who read it and recite it and even attack the teachings of the Quran. The toilets bubbling up and spreading its filth, and you don't do anything about it. And how on earth can a non-Muslim, a toilet person, be cleansed of his filth? By reading kalima. The moment he reads kalima, he will lose his right to live. So, no logic, no common sense. They have gone stark mad. The verse of the Holy Quran, أَلَيْسَ مِنْكُمْ رَجُلُ الرَّشِيدِ فِيكُمْ hai minkum hai? أَلَيْسَ مِنْكُمْ رَجُلُ الرَّشِيدِ. This applies to Pakistan nowadays, unfortunately. Of course, they are Rajul Rashid, but they are dumb people, no tongue. Or cowardly people. Nobility has become tongueless, and these people who are a blemish on Islam, were an insult to Islam. They have got long tongues, which lash at everybody. Even at me, sitting from there, these tongues reach me. Very long tongues. But the noble people are totally tongueless.
I'm afraid that Iblis is more clever and more biased than them. Iblis himself, he will do all this.
Yes, that's right. 298 see here.
I have two numbers, 298A and 295C.
Both 298
Yes.
and 295. Let's refer to them as this.
Okay, like this.
298 deals with this imprisonment, etc.
Yes.
295 deals only with murder, with condemnation to death.
Yeah.
This they mean that the message of Islam is for toilets.
Yes, yes.
You see, because they are Muslims, the rest of the world is toilets. So as if Islam came for the toilets. See, about this monopolization and patenting things, some lawyers, some others from different countries of the world wrote some very interesting letters to the government of Pakistan. And one of the things raised was this, that we can understand patents, but we didn't know until now that Islam was a commodity, saleable commodity.
No.
But we suggest that patents are not for single countries. The patents are always universal. So what is the fun of having a patent in Pakistan as a person walks out of Pakistan, suddenly he becomes Muslim and there is no patent. So you better send your ambassador to United Nations and make a plea in the United Nations to open a registry office for patentization of religions. And then fight your case and have a patent registered in the international registration or registry office made under the auspices of the United Nations. Then perhaps this would work. But otherwise we can't understand this, what sort of patent that is you have got. You understand? Now, if they do it, then the questions, they'll have to fill a form. Who invented Islam? Which of you has the rights? He agitated the people all around and gathered urchins of the street. The case was registered in Marzan, and the man was punished. And the case is the most interesting case I've ever read. That it was reported to the police that man was an Ahmadi. He has some suspicious literature in his house. So we raided the house and we discovered this paper. It was written Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And this man was punished, imprisoned. Can you imagine such a thing happening in any Arab country?
لا هذا لا يحدث في بلاد
You see,
العرب.
despite all their efforts, even Saudi Arabia has not made any ordinance against anybody, any Ahmadi, non-Ahmadi, having possession of the Holy Quran or saying La ilaha illallah.
I know that Saudi Arabia and some other countries are against Ahmadiyya, but they do not punish anyone because he has a Quran or something like
Or
this.
says Kalima La ilaha illallah.
Yes.
Or says Durood Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. No, never.
This is something
Never
strange.
it happened in any Arab country. Because this will not be just a country-wise thing. I said it's still published and recorded thing that this is going to be a global blessing from Allah which is showered upon us like heavy rains. And you will see, you will burn up, you will not be able to stop it. But that's not all. There's more to it. Hazrat Masih Maud was shown a vision. It was so strange. that neither he could interpret it nor anybody else until now had ability to interpret that. In question of bath, he said nowadays it is possible to write the baths on registers, and we can respond to the persons who have got initiated into Ahmadiyya, and it is possible but it will not going to remain possible in future. But God will change the whole system into a thing which He has shown me. And that is like a beam of light ascending and spreading out throughout the world. And this beam is apparently single to begin with, but then it multiplies into colors and appears everywhere. And so you will be answered about your baya and things, and we will receive information through this new system which God has told me is going to be invented. So it is not just my feeling, you know. It was said 100 years before I even thought of it.
We witnessed this.
Yes, that's right.
يقول أمير المؤمنين
Unbelievable. Last year there were more than 400,000.
في الاجتماع السنوي عن طريق
In
التلفاز.
Japan, in Los Angeles, in America, in Hawaii Islands, in African countries, all over the world. The times were different. Midnight, early morning, late night, midday. And here we were doing bath all together in different languages.
No.
But that's not all as yet.
وهذا ليس كل شيء.
More to come. There were some traditions. Now the traditions are not perhaps from Bukhari or these things, but some great pious divines from in the past predicted some signs of Imam Mahdi. And they said the most fascinating sign which would appear would be that he would address people from one place, and he would be seen in the east as well as in the west. And people will see him and hear him, and he will be fixed on one place, but the whole world will be watching him. Now, no one on earth could imagine such a thing to happen when these things were predicted. So whether the rivaya, the link of the rivayat is weak or strong, it becomes irrelevant now. Prediction has come true. And when a prophecy comes true, then it is a sure sign that it was not an impostor who had made it, because ilmul ghaib is known only by Allah. So when you read this again, previously I had been reading it and never thought of such a thing. Now when Hazrat Masih Islam's picture is shown and his message is delivered, this is happening every day, for 12 hours daily this happens.
Yeah.
So why don't they see? Isn't it a blessing from Allah which was predicted and designed?
They do not know this.
And yet there is more to come. It's not the end, is that? Hazrat Masih Maud Islam claimed to be the Messiah, promised Messiah, who was promised by Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah, but the title was Messiah. So there should have been something mentioned in his capacity as a Messiah as well. Something like this would happen. Now, it's a strange thing. There was a vision quoted in the New Testament. These people did not understand. But when this Alami Bayat was done, then suddenly people realized, oh, this is what had been written before. It is said that once in Jerusalem, Jesus Christ and his followers, his disciples were gathered, people coming from all sides. Suddenly, under the blessing from the Holy Spirit, they started speaking languages which they had never known. And simultaneously, they were speaking different languages, and whosever language that was, he understood, and the rest thought it was just a noise. So when the first Alami Bayat was televised, this is exactly what happened.
Yes.
And till that, I had no idea as to this prophecy being applicable to this. when it was over, then people started writing me, you know what has happened? It was said that something will happen where simultaneously many languages will be spoken and only he would understand whose language it is. And for others it will be just a noise. So when the bath was done, when the translation was made, so many languages, nobody could understand except the person whose language that was.
It was a souk of languages.
Yes, that's Soka language, that's right. I don't remember the mention of Masih being present, but it is said his disciples were there. Now, after saying that,
I remember this, Hudur. I am not sure.
we'll check up.
Yes,
We'll check up. You see, it happened under Allah's influence.
No, no.
Because they said, how will you do it? Will you read it in Arabic or English? I said, if I do it in one language, they will not understand. How will they do the bay'ah? So let us gather representatives of different languages here. Let them sit and let us connect us through hands. And they should sit there, and when I have reread the words of bay'ah, then they all should simultaneously start reading their words. And through television, they would reach their countries, and they would understand.
No.
Each country would understand, Japanese would understand this is Japanese. They will not understand the rest of the noise. And this is exactly how it happened. Next year, in early August or late July, we're going to have this conference once again. So I invite all to watch this themselves, then they will realize how great a blessing this is with the grace of Allah.